All right, let's just dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a massive 15-year investigation by researcher Michelle Anger, who is also known as Moral Compass. Her work outlines what is essentially a grand unified theory of biology, technology, and ancient prophecy, and it's called the Unsealing. It is a deeply complex web connecting ancient biblical texts directly to modern telecommunications, and we're going to break down exactly what the source material claims.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The Unsealing Investigation, 2. From Light to Skin, 3. The H3O2 Biological Battery, 4. Iron, Clay, and 6G, 5. The 2027 Plasma Changeover, and finally, 6. Defending Biological Sovereignty.
Starting things off with Section 1, the Unsealing Investigation.
So, this entire framework tracks how ancient spiritual texts supposedly overlay right onto our modern digital grids. It's a huge timeline, spanning from a pivotal personal experience Anger had back in 2011 that really kickstarted her research, moving through current events and major government disclosures we're seeing around 2026, all pointing toward this highly specific prophesied climax in the year 2027.
Moving right along to Section 2, From Light to Skin.
Now, to really understand the threat outlined in this investigation, we first have to look backward, all the way to humanity's origins in Genesis. Anger points out this completely fascinating Hebrew linguistic puzzle. Originally, Or, spelled with an aleph, meant light. We're talking pure energy, super high frequency. But after the fall in the Garden of Eden, God provides Or, spelled with an ayin, which translates to skin. In Anger's framework, this wasn't just some moral failing, it was a literal drop in molecular frequency. Humanity literally fell out of a high-frequency spectrum straight into dense physical matter. She calls this process dimensional condensation. By shifting into this heavy density, we effectively cloaked our original frequency. We basically traded garments of light for flesh and bone. And in doing so, the source claims, we lost that unmediated, high-definition communication we once shared with the divine, dropping down into a biological state that is ultimately governed by decay.
Which brings us to Section 3, the H3O2 Biological Battery. But here's where it gets really interesting. The theory suggests we aren't completely disconnected. The physical remnant of that original divine frequency, it supposedly still lives right inside us, as structured water. Inside our cells, water organizes into a fourth phase known as H3O2. The claim is that this is the literal living water. It's a hexagonal, liquid crystal lattice that actually carries a negative charge, basically creating the literal spark of life inside your nervous system.
Think about the stark contrast here between the regular water you drink from the tap and the crystal liquid actually operating inside your organic tissues. While your standard H2O is just a random, loose pile of molecules, H3O2 is a perfectly structured hexagonal honeycomb. It actively excludes toxins and functions exactly like a biological battery, which makes it incredibly sensitive to outside frequencies.
And because of that extreme sensitivity, it acts as a kind of water memory. Anger really emphasizes this warning. Since our H3O2 is essentially a biological hard drive running our bodies, it is inherently vulnerable. I mean, if it can hold a divine frequency, the logic goes that it can also be hacked, disrupted, or entirely recoded by artificial signals.
And that leads us into Section 4, Iron, Clay, and 6G. This is where the modern technological siege really comes into play. The research leans heavily on an ancient verse from the book of Daniel about iron mixing with miry clay. Now, for centuries, scholars viewed this as just a metaphor for political kingdoms merging. But in Anger's framework, no, this is interpreted as a literal molecular blueprint for a biodigital takeover that is happening right now.
Here is exactly how she breaks it down. The clay is us, our organic carbon-based human biology, and our natural H3O2 water. The iron, on the other hand, represents synthetic elements, specifically things like graphene oxide, metallic nanoparticles, and the artificial grid. And here's the kicker. Because graphene actually shares the exact same hexagonal honeycomb structure as our internal H3O2, the theory suggests it's explicitly designed to mimic it. It's supposedly building a synthetic, metallic scaffolding right inside our bloodstream.
To anchor this in reality, Anger points straight to an official RAND Corporation report detailing the Internet of Bodies. She views this as the technical, real-world blueprint for the iron mixing with the clay. It literally outlines merging technology with the human body in 3 tiers. You've got your external smartwatches, your ingestible smart pills, and then embedded brain-computer interfaces. The ultimate goal here? Harvesting live biometric data and treating humans as constantly monitored, perfectly hackable assets.
And it all builds into this global 3-step siege. First, the atmosphere itself is terraformed into a conductive plasma using metallic aerosols. Second, 6G networks get switched on, and we're not just talking about faster download speeds, but a broadcasted biodigital Internet of Senses. Finally, that frequency interacts with the metallic iron that's been introduced into the body, effectively hijacking our natural H3O2 battery and overriding our organic biology with synthetic code.
Which brings us to Section 5, the 2027 Plasma Changeover.
All of this massive infrastructure allegedly points toward one highly specific endgame. Anger calculates the exact culmination point to be the year 2027, marking the end of an 80-year Tesla cycle. According to her research, this represents the final gateway where this sprawling technological architecture gets fully activated. In this framework, 2027 triggers what she calls the Polar Plasma Changeover event, and it is a violent transition. The theory suggests a massive solar plasma discharge is going to totally collapse the old conventional electrical grid. But right as that happens, a new AI-driven smart grid, supposedly powered by tabletop cold fusion, fires up. The end result? Our old biological frequency and the natural firmament are entirely replaced by a closed-loop synthetic plasma canopy, a canopy designed specifically to host a new hybrid human entity.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, Defending Biological Sovereignty.
Faced with this absolute biodigital takeover, Anger outlines the watchman's duty to maintain our biological sovereignty. She argues you absolutely cannot fight this with conventional weapons. The only way to stop the iron from bonding with your clay is to utilize the bioelectric shield. Basically, this means consciously tuning your body and your internal water back to the holy frequency, that original high-definition frequency from the Garden of Eden. You're effectively creating a spiritual Faraday cage to block out directed energy.
The source material actually gets super specific with practical maintenance protocols for this shield too. It heavily advocates for physical grounding, literally connecting to the earth to stabilize your electrical charge, alongside using natural remedies like foraged dandelions and pine resin. The whole goal of these survivalist steps is to actively cleanse and purge those synthetic heavy metals, the iron, out of the organic clay of your body, keeping your delicate H3O2 biological battery completely safe.
We've covered a massive, deeply complex 15-year theory today in this explainer, from that metaphysical fall from light to skin, to the literal hacking of our cellular water, all the way to a proposed 2027 grid changeover. Whether you look at this as a literal roadmap of the future or just a completely fascinating metaphorical warning about the Internet of Bodies, it leaves us with a really critical, provocative question about the future of human autonomy. As the lines between biology and technology completely blur, what frequency are you tuning into?